Join us now, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Tokyo on Fire. Today is October 31st, 2017. Happy Halloween. This is our Halloween special, and we have a lot of scary things to discuss with you today. Sorry for those that are coming in for just a little bit of a dabble on what's going on in Japanese politics, because we have to go into a deep dive. I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Cucek. Michael?
It's great to be here on this Halloween to talk about, well, a whole bunch of spirits, I guess.
I like your outfit. It's very fitting.
I am in disguise, of course. Anyway, be that as it may, we have a lot to discuss.
We have a lot to discuss. So for viewers who don't know, we film every 2 weeks. So we weren't on point when the election results were announced a week ago yesterday.
Yeah, we didn't have an immediate follow-up, but there have been a snowballing set of events along the way that have kept things going, despite missing the big moment itself.
Right. So let's deep dive. This is kind of post-election analysis. What happened? What does it mean? Who's in? Who's out? There's a lot to discuss.
Yeah. The main story in terms of the policy issues is that Mr. Abe and his party did well, and they did sufficiently well to maintain their own personal majorities in both houses, and also with the Komeito, the coalition partner, have more than enough seats, just over the limit necessary for a constitutional revision, if indeed that is what Mr. Abe wants to try to do.
Mm-hmm. That's what everybody suspects. That's what he's been kind of promoting as his legacy.
And we'll see if he's able to do anything, because when they took exit polls from this same election that gave him the majority to make that change, over 50% of those responding said, we don't want him to do that, or we don't trust him enough to do that. It was not an exit poll, but one after a poll a few days later. We think that the ruling coalition won too many seats. Over half of those polled said that. So there's
careful what you wish for.
Yes, there's really not a lot of propulsion toward that constitutional revision, and we'll see if he actually expends the necessary political capital. We know that if he starts the process seriously and approaches the most sacred part of it, Article 9, that will tie down business for the next 2 years at least.
Well, his rhetoric has also changed, because it was previously, let's talk about it, let's get a consensus, let's get the groups together. And just recently, he said, it's a political issue. We're going to decide on a political level, which means the numbers are what's going to count.
And then the thing is, what he did was really interesting. On election day, when he was asked, okay, now you've won your majority, are you going to go through with the plan that you set up in May?
Right.
And when you said, by the year 2020, I want to amend the Constitution. And he said, well, that's more of an aspirational goal. Mm-hmm. It was to get the conversation started. I don't actually have a calendar.
A good response.
A good response. Very political, very proper. But it sure takes the wind out of the sails immediately after the election happened. Mm-hmm. A lot of things have come out after the election, particularly this idea that they've just tossed out in the last 2 days, the ruling party and the Kante, the Prime Minister's residence, of reducing the amount of diet time that the opposition gets to speak. Now, it's true, the opposition gets an inordinate amount of time if you look at that amount of time as compared to the number of seats that they control. But this issue was never brought up during the election. It was never brought up before the election. It's suddenly this jack in the box that jumped out. And we'll see if the opposition parties are able to organize themselves and get the correct response, which is, what are you afraid of, Abe? What are you afraid of, that you have to limit our question time? And don't get caught in the, well, what's the correct proportion? We have 70% of the seats. Why don't we get 70% of the time? Is what they're saying.
Right.
And the response to that is because no one wants to hear a whole bunch of speakers all saying how great Mr. Abe is. That's not how democracy works.
Well, even 30% of the time they might get, the amount of time that is spent inside the Diet now is totally shrunk. We've just had an election. We've got the cabinet, a new cabinet, and then the cabinet is going to apparently rotate back in.
What he said is that he's not going to change a thing. He said that we'll see if he goes through with it. I mean, tomorrow we'll open the Diet session. Who knows what the next Jack in the Box is going to be? But for now, he says the LDP and he have come to the agreement that Oshima Tadamori stays on as Speaker,
right?
Which means Oshima, if he serves a full term, will become the longest serving Speaker of the House. That the cabinet will stay as it was, which makes sense because it's actually never served during a Diet session. So it's essentially brand new right off the factory floor.
Kind of a nice ride, though.
That would be, but it would be fun if he did something, because then you would find out who was really on the outs within the cabinet. But it seems as though he's going to keep everything. So this is really, one person said, this is just status quo ante.
Yeah.
It's as if we didn't have an election at all.
Well, just took a little bit of a hiccup, but then he came back a little bit more emboldened.
That's right, and we'll see if that kind of, I'm reconfirmed as the people's choice.
I have received my mandate.
I have received my mandate. I'm ready now to tromp on everyone. Well,
right.
But the thing is, he hasn't received his mandate, has he?
No.
No, he hasn't.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, yes, he got 34% of the votes in the proportional. That's still only 17% of all the voters. So to say that you are deserved a landslide victory,
right,
without acknowledging that it's the electoral system, the mix of single-member districts and proportional, and that especially in the proportional, they took a big hit. They romped in the single members, but that there are new political forces that we need to talk about that have emerged and really took what was a moribund party, which was the opposition Democratic Party, by breaking it apart.
Right.
Made it. It was like the egg that you needed to break to make an omelet, and they did make an omelet out of it.
Let's get started right into it, because I think what people really want to hear about is what happened with the Party of Hope. How did it disintegrate? It was coming up so strong. The first week of the election, it looked like they were going to be gangbusters. Everybody was leaving their party and coming in. The independents were coming in. It looked like a real party.
Yeah, there are two lines of thought on that. There's the mainstream believes that where Koike blew it was by becoming autocratic, dictatorial, and demanding to be the ideological leader of this party. That when she said, I will take some of the DP members, but those who are not on my side ideologically, I will not take them into the new party, that this demonstrated a lack of openness,
inclusion,
and also not a recognition that in order to have a fully functioning opposition party, you need a catch-all party with both left wings and right wings. She only wanted a center-right party, and that she was going to use that to challenge another center-right party is that argument. That's one line of argument. The other, which is the one I more adhere to, was that she didn't run.
Right.
And because she didn't run, she was the brand. She was the whole thing. She was the idea that maybe a woman prime minister would be cool. And here's someone who has all the bona fides, who has all of the momentum behind her. Wouldn't it be great if we had that choice? When she opted out of running either on the proportional list or in a district, that took all of the wind out of the party, and it became instead just a refuge for people who had enough money to actually pay to get on a party list and also run in a district, because you have to pay money. You have to pay the deposit, the kyotakukin, and you have to pay for your office expenses, because she had no money. All she was the Koike brand.
Right.
And when that
Which was good enough for a lot of people.
Which was good enough for a lot of people, but when she didn't show up and instead spent election day in Paris at a mayor's and governor's meeting, that was it for her party. Still, when I say it for her party, it still won 50 seats.
Right, 17%, 18% of, it was the number 3 party that came in, the LDP, the Constitutional Democratic Party, and then the Party of Hope.
So the Hope, in failing, still secured a remarkable number of seats. And it's not really a total failure, but everyone sees that her political career, even as governor, has been severely damaged.
And how about the titular head of the Party of Hope?
Who knows who that is? I mean, there
Well,
are.
Wakasa I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, Wakasa, yeah, but he has already said I am deader on arrival than anything else.
I lost my election.
Yeah, he didn't get elected to the Diet. He was, there was the whole. It was very strange in terms of the people who actually ran to her first did, for the most part, did very poorly in their districts. And
interesting.
It's not really. It's some. Maybe it's an indication there is a divine presence in the universe. That the rats who left the sinking boat first were the ones who were not saved.
How about that?
Yeah.
Well, he also is resigning from politics apparently. So it's almost as if I'm sick of you guys. I weighed in, I gave it my all, I lost, and you guys just crapped all over me.
Well, what we have now is a party called the Party of Hope, which nominally has Koike as their leader, but they are mostly refugees from the DP. They are basically self-financing.
They weren't supposed to be refugees. It was supposed to be spontaneous from new members, new candidates. Right?
That should have been what
Right.
should have happened. Except Mr. Abe, by having his election, stopped the normal evolution of that party, which would have been an organic growth over a year.
Right.
Getting donors, getting a public behind it, having everything organized.
And we suspect that might have been one of the reasons why he called the election.
That's probably a reason why he did. But what he could not and anticipate was what happened with the CDPJ, a party that did not exist, even as the Diet was dissolved. 20 days after its founding, it goes into election, and it comes out the number 2 opposition party. It goes from 15 seat members to 55, 54, depending on how you count it. This party, which existed basically as a Twitter account.
That's right. It sure did. It exploded the first couple of days, and it had one member.
It was basically a Twitter account, and through social media, coordinated in a way that this is basically the Obama 2008 election for Japan, where the confluence of the ability to use social media as an organizing tool, as a fundraising tool, as a means of communicating, was taken up by one party, and the CDPJ ran with it, and just on a shoestring managed to elect virtually all of its candidates. At least in one instance, it actually had to give up a seat that it had won in terms of proportional votes because it didn't have enough candidates on its list. It had to cede it to another party.
So there's a magic there.
There's a magic there, and the thing is, it was able to collect nearly 12 million votes, which is the same number of votes, incidentally, as the old Ishin no To did when it first came out, and it had several years of growth. This is 20 days, and it was able to put together a public that would listen to its message and want to hear its message.
And it looks like it has legs too.
And it looks like it has legs, and they're being very smart. They're saying they are not going to try to put together a catch-all party. That's not where we stand. We're not going to try to challenge the LDP by being LDP light.
And we're going to focus on policies. We're not going to focus on gamesmanship or strategizing how we're going to play this big game that you guys are involved in.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it. The phrasing will matter, because this is still a party basically that exists only in words. It doesn't have local chapters. It doesn't have a fundraising apparatus. It doesn't really have. I mean, they opened their office just a day ago. They were, oh, here we are. We now exist. We have an actual physical location. It's all been on a shoestring, and it will and that normally should not have happened.
Right.
And that's one thing we could say that we were not quite clear on, or at least maybe I was only not quite clear on, that you really could just out of thin air create a party. It turns out that you can on social media. Now, that will have someone we'll figure out how to abuse that in time. But right now, it's a great feeling. A lot of people were very much turned on. And the polls that came out afterward of which parties do you support, the LDP, of course, had its usual 34, 38%. But then you started seeing 17, 18% of the people saying they were supporters of the CDPJ. Now, the DPJ, in its heyday, had about those figures.
Right.
You know, and certainly no party since the 2012 election, no opposition party has been near 17, 18%. So something amazing happened.
Right.
And we'll see, the question is, okay, this was with an almost historically low level of participation, due in part to the typhoon,
Right.
but also to the fact that this was there was no really reliable counter or a center around which one can express an alternative vision of government to the LDP, and where
Pretty much the same flavor of vanilla.
yeah,
Right.
it's right. And you did not have, at least in the districts, you did not have an organized primary opposition candidate. In many districts, there were 2 or 3.
You had the communists.
You had the communists there. You would have an Ishin candidate, and you'd have a CDBJ candidate, or you'd have a Hope candidate and an Ishin candidate. All kinds of different alternative variations on the theme. That of course those opposition candidates cancel each other out, and the LDP candidate, who offers stability, who offers connections, who offers the possibility of you being economically supported if you're a rural district, is the logical choice. You know, don't vote with your heart, vote with your head.
Right.
Now we will see if this new movement can combine both the heart and the head and get something going in regards to that.
One can't help speculating what Cucek could have done had the Constitutional Democratic Party not had the wherewithal to sprout up. If she had been able to include that group as well, or part of that group.
I think it would have ended up very poorly, because it really is at that point LDP light. You have to offer something new. And you and I can disagree on that, because there's a huge disagreement whether you can only beat the LDP by being like the LDP. Ozawa's vision of the DPJ that he put together, and he beat the LDP at its own game.
Right.
Accept that. Or that, as I've been arguing, that this election has brought tremendous clarity to Japanese politics. It's not left versus right. It's not conservatives versus liberals. Those terms confuse people and get them on the wrong track, because, let's face it, the economic program of Mr. Abe is a social democratic party's project in any European country, and it's communism when you've seen it from the American perspective. But it's really in Japan, it's not between left and right. It's between those who believe, let's follow the law and the Constitution by the book, and those who say, yeah, but we need to get stuff done too. Those two different sides. And let's be honest, that's a great place for a country to be in, but when you have to choose between the idealists and the pragmatists, because either way, you're going to get something good out of an election. You don't have a good versus evil fight, because pragmatists, you need them to get things done. And ideals, if you don't have them, then you're down the drain.
Right. Well, the thing that irritates me is that since I'm an American and trained in the American political thought, that a competition of ideas is where you really want politics to be, and you want there to be a balance and a swaying back and forth, so that the better ideas always rise to the top. And here it seems like, well, number one, it's skewed so that the LDP always wins. It doesn't always win, but it's skewed so that they don't have to fight as hard as the upcomers. And that the other thing is that from maybe a global perspective, it seems like Japanese politics is just caught in a morass. It doesn't really get its act together. It's not really vibrant. The politicians are repeat politicians, either through their father or their grandfather, and so there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, the thing I think of it more of a glass half full rather than a glass half empty. In this case, yeah, they have continuity, but continuity is not such a bad thing. In and of itself, if it's continuing, if you have a family like Konotaro, this family, right? Fourth generation, or Koizumi Shinjiro. No one's going to say that Koizumi Shinjiro should be out of politics because his family has sent already 3 generations to the Diet. Everyone says, Shinjiro, please come to my district because if you do, I will win, which is what he did. He didn't campaign at all in his own district, and he won by the highest majority of any candidate in Japan because he's so popular and he's so with it. You can't have that exclusion. So that part I don't buy necessarily. True, there are some completely dead pieces of wood that just are there because their father was there. Agreed. But the issue is, does the Diet force the government to be accountable to the people? Do alternate voices get heard, and do policies get shifted because of those voices being uttered? And that you have to say yes, because there is the proportional vote. And the proportional vote puts in the communists, it puts in just 2, but members of the Socialist Party, they're there. You have the CDBJ and you have Hope. They will, in Diet session, if the government doesn't cut off debate, they will put the government through the ringer. And on live, you watch it live streaming on the web, or you watch it live on NHK if it's a budget committee. You're going to see it in plain sight that they're dragging the government over the coals, and they've done a heck of a job keeping Abe and his allies from doing whatever they want.
Right.
You know, he's been in power 5 years. Where is that constitutional amendment?
Right.
You know, where is all this, this propaganda that we're supposed to be seeing? That's this patriotic education that we'll all have. All of these dark scenarios that were painted for the coming of Abe Shinzo, and when he got the 2/3 majority in the House of Councilors, now the hammer's really going to come down.
It didn't.
It hasn't.
Right.
It hasn't. Maybe now it'll come down. And that this little business of fooling with the time, that doesn't look good. And that has to be shut down really quickly. And chances are that it will be, because maybe, it's not a competitive arena with 2 gladiators going at it. Still, it's a pretty good show.
Yeah. What happened to Moritomo Gakuin and the Kakemondai?
Interesting. That, even on election night, the Secretary General of the LDP, Nikai Toshihiro, most likely when Abe had already gone to bed, said, these issues are still out there, they will have to be dealt with, and we'll deal with them in a proper manner.
Vote for us.
Yeah, no, this was after all of that was done. This is after the polls had closed. But and I can't imagine him saying it with Abe right next to him. Maybe he did, but I don't know. But even the LDP acknowledges it's still out there, and it has not been dealt with. And maybe they'll become more arrogant, maybe become more dictatorial as we get through. We'll have the extraordinary Diet session.
Starts tomorrow.
We'll see it. It starts tomorrow. When this goes up, it'll probably be the same day that this goes up. When it happens, we'll see how they behave.
Right.
We'll see what they say. See how they react to the catcalls.
Well, there's a lot of distraction already on schedule. I mean, Duterte, the president of the Philippines, will be here, and President Trump will be here.
Nobody knows what's going to happen with Trump. That's when we'll see what's really going down in terms of the Abe administration. We'll see how the opposition I guess we'll have to wait until January to see how they react. Most likely the trip will be all right, but certainly there are a lot of people in Japan who simply don't want Donald Trump here, and
a lot of Americans are happy that he's here.
But the police agency has mobilized 10,000 extra policemen to be patrolling Tokyo at the time. And the usual precautions, taking out the garbage cans from the trains and all that's being covered. But they are going to absolutely flood this area to prevent any kind of disturbances. Now, there's not going to likely be riots, but nevertheless, he's a deeply unpopular president here. And even with the North Korea situation, the relationship that Mr. Abe has with Donald Trump, that very friendly relationship, which will be emphasized in this golf outing.
He's only going to be here for what, 2 days, 3 days?
Yeah.
And one of those will be spent golfing.
Golfing with the world number 4 ranked golfer.
I didn't get an invitation.
And I know you didn't get. Well, you'll get one next time. Honestly, it'll be your time will come. But that, and then now that we have the announcement that Pico Taro will be doing. I have a pen.
Yes.
I have an apple. Or one person jokingly said, "I've got North Korea. I've got a scandal. Snap election." Gosh, that's actually would be funny for a lot of us, rather than watching Pico Taro do his actual act. I hope they do understand that the song that he's famous for is 90 seconds long. It's not going to be a hell of a long production unless they do a lot of revving of the music. I don't get it. But that relationship.
Anyway, lots of pomp and circumstance.
Lots of pomp and very frivolous activities. There's going to be blowback from that. We have to be serious. We're in serious trouble, and Mr. Trump is putting us into serious trouble in regards to North Korea.
Yeah, I think probably the likelihood that North Korea will do something provocative while he's here is rather high.
Well, there's also the real physical aspect of having 3 aircraft carriers in the region, which we've had announced, which is there, I suppose, to send a message to the DPRK, don't mess with our president. Of course, it has the alternate message, mess with the area when he's not here.
Or, just call your bluff, I think it would be a provocative thing for him to actually do something. That's what he does all the time.
Well, we'll see. It's going to be, you can argue either way.
Yeah.
Either way is realistic, either way is rational.
Pretty soon.
We'll know soon enough. But after, even if nothing happens afterward, there will be a day of reckoning in regards to the way that Japan looks. Japan is really friends with Donald Trump is not necessarily what Shinzo Abe needs.
Let's revisit this when we film next in 2 weeks, because I think because of the diplomatic aura that the Prime Minister will get a pickup in his popularity.
We will see. I don't think it's going to happen, and we might even see a slight decline.
Okay, but the Extraordinary Diet Session, which starts tomorrow, it's going to be a short one, and it's packed with diplomatic trips as well.
And then they're going to have the vote, and we'll finally find out where Hope's votes are going to go to, because even at this hour, it's unclear who they're supposed to be voting for. We know now that the communists will not be voting for Edano Yukio. They were flirting with that idea so as to show that they are making this assertion that people that would have voted for the communists voted for the CDPJ, and we want to show that we also want a long-term relationship with the CDPJ, to which the CDPJ would say, thanks, but no thanks.
We're number 2.
we're fine where we are.
We're the number 1 opposition party now.
And we're fine, thanks.
Yeah.
It seems as though they'll be fine. They will switch and now vote for Shi Kazuo, their own leader. But what happens with the Hope votes? What happens with the votes of the independents? And that's the thing. There is the third largest opposition party is this paradoxically named Association of the Non-Aligned, which is self-contradictory, of course.
They're kind of Ronin.
Yeah, but Mushozoku no Kai, the association of those who
We got to have an association.
of those who are not associated.
Yes. Otherwise, what are we going to do?
That's right. But these are people with a specific skill set, which is they can win in district elections. Because they were not aligned, they could not run as zombie candidates. They could not run on the proportional list and on the district list.
So there's a shaking out.
So they survived the harder test, which is to win in a district and not be an LDP member. They are, in a certain sense, LDP light. They're center-right conservatives, close to the business community, or part of it. In the case of Okada Katsuya, he's the second son of the founder of the Aeon Mall fortune. They are really, they're pro-business. And they've put together this group, now the third largest, ahead of the communists, group in, and also ahead of Ishin in terms of membership, where they're going to go. They have a lot of clout, and they're veterans, and they won in their own districts, even though they were not LDP. They'll be a force to be reckoned with as well. So whatever you may say,
only as a cohesive whole. I mean, actually, their best value is as a pickup for some other party that's trying to bolster itself,
exactly. That they're just a sweet prize for whomever.
They can be had.
They can be had. But they can demand a high price because they're set. They're district winners. They won in the harshest conditions possible. They did not have a party behind them with its money, with its activists, etc. The big losers in this election, interestingly enough, was Labor. Langley. They sent folks out to do as they had done for the DP, which is they ran for the Kibo parties. They did the organizing, they put up the posters, they manned the phones, or womaned the phones, whatever, and Kibo got wiped.
Maybe they didn't have their heart in it?
It's possible they didn't have their heart in it. There was a sense that many unions were actually breaking off from Langley and going their own way and supporting whomever they thought was going to be a more likely winner. Or they might have just simply ignored calls for support. Nevertheless, again, this idea of left-right, of the party of management being the LDP and then the DP being the party of labor, and a lot of which remains of DP up in the House of Councillors, a lot of those folks are union activists. Unions are no longer relevant right now. They don't have a party to support.
That's right. It's a full economy.
It's a full economy, and they've iced themselves out of having any influence with the CDPJ.
How about that?
They are not going to be part. They've always backed losers. Okay, Labor has never. It's never been like England, where Labor alternates with the Conservatives, with the Tories. Labor always loses. They always back the losing party. The only time they ever won was with the DPJ back in 2009. But they're really on the outs now, and we will have to see. And that's really important in terms of labor law, because reforming labor laws is fundamental to keeping the flame going in Japan. We have people who are sitting in make-work jobs, rotting there with their skills, because it's a permanent position and they don't dare go out into the job market to try to get something that uses their capacities.
And the company is afraid to fire them.
And the company has absolutely no way of firing people who are useless to them. So the labor markets here are not supply and demand. And the same, and what happens is also that wages are not set by supply and demand. Wages are rock bottom, and they don't go up, and everything needs to be broken up and let go so that in some way the prices can reestablish themselves. Yes, people need protections, and yes, people need social cohesion, but the situation here is so disjointed with this deep divide between those who have only part-time work and those who have permanent positions, that there is a vast social gulf. The people who have full-time positions can borrow money. Those who are part-timers cannot. The people who are in permanent positions have the skills. Companies that are trying to get started, startups, can't recruit these skilled people because they'd never leave their main...
They can't pick them up.
They can't pick them up. All of the vitality of capitalism that could be picked up, that's not been there. Now, with Rengo's fall and the collapse of the white-collar, mostly white-collar unions, as a political force, maybe there's some space for Mr. Abe to talk and say, we can do a few things.
Right.
And that will make, of course, Japan extremely attractive once again for international investors.
Well, we're looking forward to that. I mean, we want Tokyo to be a financial center, maybe a 24-hour city. That would be terrific, too. We've been all over the map, though, here, Michael. There are a lot of other things that we should talk about. We need to talk about what happened to Maehara and the divorce from that party of the former leader, Hashimoto Toru.
Okay, let's start with Maehara.
Okay.
Maehara comes in.
He's out of here.
Yeah, he runs against Hidano. I mean, this is a crazy story. He runs against Hidano, wins an overwhelming victory, takes over the DP, and a month later blows it apart. Now, whether that was in the plan from the beginning, and part of that in his mind when he took over,
or it was
just
just
circumstance.
beyond his capacity.
It was circumstances,
right.
and he destroys the party in the House of Representatives, tells them, run to the Party of Hope, and maybe they'll take you, and if they don't take you, I haven't gotten a promise from Koike, sorry, oops, I should have asked that promise.
Yes.
Okay, he resigns to take responsibility.
This was yesterday.
Okay.
Right.
He won his district. Again, he's one of these Matsushita Seike people. A lot of the
good people
right? in the districts, terrible, as hard to herd as cats. So as terms of being in a party, maybe a Mushozoku no Kai, maybe a association of the non-aligned is where he'll end up most likely.
Well, mostly they're
because
higher
that's
level,
where they are right now.
They're higher level beings, right?
They are higher level beings. It's true. So we mere mortals cannot understand what Maehara was thinking.
But to put it into context, I mean, there are pundits who have said he is absolutely the worst leader of any political party
ever
in mankind's history.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. There is that.
Rhetorical, perhaps.
Now, in terms of the Ishin, it had to prove that it was more than a regional party. It had to prove that it was able to hold on to its region, and it had to prove that there was a future for it.
Right.
I think in all three it has failed.
But it made some headway. In the first couple of, maybe the first 8 days of the election, it looked like they were coming up. They were
negotiating almost as equals with Koike.
Right.
And both of them, but Ishin fell further even than Koike, even though people don't see it that way. True, Hope candidates lost at a higher rate than Ishin candidates. But it's now a tiny little party, and it's all regional, and it could not even unseat Tsujimoto Kiyomi in Osaka, which is supposed to be where that's their bastion.
Right.
They have a very, very weak base now to do any negotiations. They will get their time in the diet, and they will become even more irrelevant as time goes on. Currently they're just Osaka resents Tokyo's preeminence party.
Right.
And that's all there is to them.
Well, what's your guess about Hashimoto just saying, look, I am through with it. You guys screwed up. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I'm going to go back to being a radio personality, a TV personality, sometimes a lawyer, and the father of many children.
Yeah, and that's a reasonable lifestyle. He will be a Twitter entity. He'll be a media entity. There are a whole bunch of ex-politicians, ex-governors out there. Higashi Kokubaru, Hideo, Masazoe reemerged from...
They still fluttering around the line.
Inose Naoki from Tokyo and Masazoe from Tokyo. They're still part. They can make a decent living being pundits.
They have influence.
They have influence. They have Ishihara Shintaro. They're all part of this universe of commentary, and they can make a comfortable living off of that. And he can just join that, and will say provocative things that perhaps only Ishihara would say. But there's a market for it. Why be in politics if you can survive without it?
So your guess is, look, I just need to create distance. I need some time. Give me some space, right?
Well, no, I think he's out. I think that it's not an attractive proposition anymore. He'll get to dine every once in a while with Abe, but it'll be much more infrequently because he's not tied to the party anymore. He'll be seen as a useful ally, a useful anti-communist,
He's got aspirations,
anti-Korean kind of phrases will come out of him from time to time, and that he may have aspirations, but the market is currently veering hard toward the idealist, away from the pragmatist point of view in terms of where the radical fringe is moving. And he's not there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It was really interesting to me and I would like to go back in that in the election, this Edano's challenge, saying we're not going to take on people who are just going to win. We want to win a certain way, and the way that the other parties were forming and reforming and backstabbing and destroying themselves. In that maelstrom, Ishihara Shintaro said, "There's only one real man, and that's Edano Yukio." And he tweets that. I mean, that a hard right-winger can go and say about
That's
this.
pretty astounding.
Yeah, it's astonishing that it shows that it's the image of being steadfast, of holding to your ideals, which has an audience, both on the left and on the right. That if someone stands for something, and when everybody else is just maneuvering,
Right.
trying to get their piece, and to heck with ideals,
Being political.
being just
Yeah.
just being, I'll say pragmatic.
Okay.
Making the deal. That there's someone who just stands there and says, no, this is not the way we should be behaving. Kobayashi Yoshinori, the famed manga artist, campaigned on behalf of the CDPJ. He's supposedly a wild-eyed right-winger, right? He has seen a vision. Ishihara saw a vision of a different kind of politics. And at that point, if I were Hashimoto Toru, I'd take a break.
Okay.
I would say, I'm not really on the idealistic side.
There's a lot of machinations that need to go on between now and probably the next, well, it's probably at the height right now. When a political party wins, there's a pecking order, and the offices inside the Diet compound are distributed accordingly. And you can see that there are a lot of chairs moving, aren't there?
There are a lot of chairs moving. The LDP's chairs are quite fine where they are, but everybody else is moving around. The interesting thing for everybody to keep an eye on, we'll try to keep an eye on it, and I hope the viewers do too, is what happens in December. We're probably not going to have a diet session. We're having an extra one to establish the new diet, to get all these people into office. I don't think we're going to have an extraordinary diet session because I don't think they want to deal with any of the legislation that's up for grabs right now. Some of the casino legislation, some of the things having to do with abdication.
Right.
We now have the idea that the emperor is going to be abdicating on April 1st of next year.
Heisei finishes.
Heisei finishes. All of these things, they're up for grabs, but I don't think they want to deal with it. At that point, December is going to be a lot of matchmaking because people will be looking to bulk up and get as much money as possible for the party when the December 12th turn comes around. It may be that even the Association of Independents will be eligible. I have to check.
So that calculation is done on December 12th?
It is on December the 31st.
Okay.
Your membership on
Yep.
December the 31st determines the amount of money that you're going to get. So we might see a little dancing about. Certainly the socialists are in deep guano right now. They don't have enough numbers of the diet. There's going to be something that happens. So we'll see some kind of coalition building. And then we go into the regular diet session in January, I guess, unless Mr. Abe decides that he's really terrified of the CDPJ and wants to put it off like he did recently until February.
Just to wrap it all up, Michael, the emperor will open the diet tomorrow, and they will have their extraordinary session?
It's an extra session. There are three types. There's the regular session, which lasts usually from January to June, of 150 days, and that's set in the Constitution. The extraordinary diet is when they don't get legislation done in the regular session and they decide somewhere later in the year, whether it's in the summer or in the fall, to have another diet session to get work done. What's happening this time, however, is called an extra diet session, tokubetsu. And that is when a new diet exists, which means all of the caucuses have changed.
Right after the election.
Right after the election, they have a special session that opens up and says, okay, these people are now in here, And
Okay.
then they have in this case, because it's the House of Representatives, they have the vote for Prime Minister. And they also will have a vote in the House of Councilors, even though it wasn't up for election. The House of Councilors will deliver its verdict. The House of Representatives someone will win there. If two different people win, it doesn't matter. The House of Representatives' choice will be the Prime Minister. And because Mr. Abe is the head of the party that has more than 50% of the seats, we know that will be Abe Shinzo.
They have a session when the extraordinary session can be however many days that they decide that it'll be, right?
That's an extraordinary session. Yeah.
Right.
But in this case, the extra session also they have some flexibility. And the question is does the opposition have enough oomph to force a longer session?
So the Prime Minister cut short the extraordinary diet session because of the election.
That's right. He had a one-day extraordinary session. It was supposed to go on for quite some time, but then he cut it off with that day and said, let's have an election. At which point, because he's going to have a new diet, he has to have an extra session afterward to put those people into office, and that's what starts tomorrow.
Right. That's by law.
By law.
Right.
The most extraordinary, though, has been the story of Yamao Shiori.
How about that? She
won, which you and I would never have predicted. How can a philanderer who quits not only her position, but her party to show her remorse,
her guilt,
is reelected a few weeks later by a razor-thin margin.
880 votes?
Yeah, something really small. And there are thousands of votes that are blank.
Hanging chads.
Yeah, well, one guesses they either have obscenities written on them or they have nothing on them. There are thousands of them. She still pulls out a victory. And now, because there's a sex scandal involving one of the new CDPJ members, they've pushed him out and slid her in.
Isn't that incredible? She's got to be really hot there, Michael.
She's she's a very famous actress. So and she went to Todai and went to Todai Law, Faculty of Law. She has all the smarts. But wow, what a story these last few months have been for her.
Well, in studying the election process, you learn a lot about how things are done, how people act, how they evaluate different things, different people, things that are happening in the economy or in politics, how it might be okay for them.
And,
right?
and in this case, clearly that she worked hard to win re-election, and she didn't have a backup because she didn't have a party. She didn't have a proportional seat possibility. Right. She had to win her district, and she did. And okay, she was not the only person to come back. Kan Naoto, who was Mr. 475, the last person picked in the last diet off the zombie list, off the proportional list. He came back and he won his district just through hard work. And that's what Yamao Shiori did. Hard work, day in, day out, absorbing insults, absorbing people saying, hey,
pressing the flesh.
Hey, what about your boyfriend? She just bowled her way through it and came out a winner. That's a great story, I think, and that's a good sign that politics here is not moribund. It's really, really lively.
No, it's been really exciting. A lot of fallout from the last election that we just went through. There's a lot more in store between now and the end of the year. Please stay tuned because we're going to be following it. Catch you later.
He who breaks the rules goes back to the house of pain.